Hi, I'm Tracy Pierce. Thanks for joining me for this series of mini animal communications. So this idea to do these videos of live animal communications really started back when the coronavirus pandemic first put the whole US pretty much into shelter in place or lockdown. And since then, it's kind of evolved. There's been more and more animals, especially wild animals, coming forward to me that want to share their wisdom, share their stories with people. And so I've really been honoring that and just honoring whatever wild animals show up and kind of present themselves to me. Uh, they let me know they have a message, and I set up a time to do a video with them essentially. So this has been a really fun project, and it's been a really fun way actually for me to learn more about the wildlife around my area too. I've lived here in Colorado for almost 4 years now, and I lived here a couple other times, but I'm not as familiar with the wildlife here as I am where I moved here from. And so it's been really interesting also to learn about the animals that are different here than where I lived before. So this animal that showed up for today's session is an orange belted bumblebee. Had some help identifying this with a friend on Facebook. And, you know, I didn't really realize how many different kinds of bumblebees there are. I really wanted to get a picture of this one because I'd never seen one with that orange stripe across its back like that before. And apparently it's a whole breed of bumblebees. And I've noticed, since I took this picture, I've noticed at least two other species of bumblebees that seem to hang out around the area. And I'm not sure if there's been something with the pandemic, with everything being locked down, that I've heard these. I can't call them anything more than rumors that we've been seeing more bees and more insects this spring because of the coronavirus lockdowns. And I'm not sure if I'm just paying more attention this year and seeing more of these bumblebees, or if there really are more of them out. But I am noticing more different species than I had before. So it looks like we do have somebody joining us here live. Oh, a couple people actually. So if you're joining me live here on Zoom and you have a question you would like to ask this bumblebee, there should be a bar on the bottom of your Zoom. One of those buttons should say chat. Just click on that, and if you have questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat box there. So I'm just going to go ahead and get quiet and start tuning into this bumblebee and see what it has to tell us today. So I feel this appreciation, I guess, is the first thing I feel come forward from this bumblebee. Um, I've got the wallpaper on my computer. The background is an image of St. Francis with some animals. And so the bumblebee's kind of pointing towards that image, saying, "Thank you so much, all the creatures, great and small. Like I'm a small creature, and I appreciate having this opportunity to share." Well, I know, in the last 10 years, especially, there's been a lot of renewed interest in bees and insects. We understand how important you are to our ecosystem, at least some of us do. And, I wonder if you get any sense of that, if you feel the appreciation humans, increased appreciation humans have for bees and flying insects. Yeah, it's saying it's almost like they feel these kind of zones. Um, there's a sense of, it's almost like they can feel the zones of humans that appreciate them, I guess is what it's kind of saying. Is it feels, it's almost like they can see these fields or plots where the humans appreciate them. Like there's plants for them. It's showing me the area where I took this picture, like the residents there had planted this whole strip of their, what's the correct word for it? I want to say on the parking. It's between the sidewalk and the street. That area, they've completely planted that in all pollinator friendly. So this bee is saying it senses in zones like where people's appreciation has increased for them. Yeah, it's almost like instead of all the plants being so spread out, the bee is this bee is saying it sees these little groupings of like, oh, this was made just for bees, or a kind of sense of that behind the energy of the garden. I wonder what other messages you might have for us today. So I feel like he's trying to show me something about gender, because I keep like in my mind, I don't know, I don't guess I'm not sure what I'm actually saying, but I feel like I keep going back and forth between the he and she pronouns. Like I feel like this bee is a he, but then as the messages are coming, I translate it into a she pronoun. So what he's showing me about gender is saying, yeah, bees have these separated genders, but we all contribute in, like, it's not, we all have our roles to contribute, and it's not about gender, it's saying. Is there more to that? One of the biggest qualities of bees that makes them successful, it's saying, is that it's way like our colonies or our communities were kind of one mind. One mind, he's saying, you know, you humans call it hive mind. Um, but we are all focused on a certain mission of survival, and we all rely on each other, and we all have our own role to fulfill. And it's our dedication to that that really helps our society, or our culture of bees, if you will, move forward. This bee sees it as a real strength. I do have a question coming in for you. Bee, was there anything else that you wanted to say about that with the gender roles, or um, yeah, he keeps showing this unity of mind thing. It's almost like there's this one thing, this one idea, one goal, this one thing, and then there's all these satellite things that kind of make it happen. And he's showing how there's, you know, it's different because there's so many humans, like there's so many bees, but then there's these individual colonies that work together as a unit. And he's saying that like humans have this kind of fractioned or factioned um, thing where it's really hard to get humans to all work towards one goal, just as it would be to get all bees to work towards one goal. Like there's this set of bees here and a set of bees here, and they may all, you know, quantitatively be doing the same thing, but he's showing how these factions of humans have different ideas about, you know, maybe this religious faction thinks it's the right way to go, and then there's this other political faction that thinks this is the right way to go. And what he's showing about the bees is none of the bees' central core thing, mission that they're doing conflicts with the other bees, but he's showing how with humans that's totally not true, where so this religious group may think that the political group is doing things completely wrong, and the political group thinks the religious group is doing things wrong, and there's like this clash. That doesn't happen among the bee population. There aren't these higher, he's quote, like showing air quotes, lofty ideas about the right way to do things. We just we do what we need to do. We take care of ourselves, we take care of our colony, and and it works and it doesn't clash with our neighbors. Okay, so let's see what we got this. We have this question here. So we have flowers in our backyard for bees and butterflies, but wonder about water. Can you use bird baths or need something smaller? What do you think about that? So it's showing me like dew in the morning or maybe after a gentle rain, how there's drops of water on the plant and or plants around, and he's just showing like coming up and kind of touching those droplets of water, saying those droplets are really enough for us. And so it seems like you're saying that you don't need them to put out any bird baths or any extra water for you. Is that what you're saying? Well, Nancy, the bee says, well, I think the birds in the area would like some sort of water something. Show me that again, please, Mr. B. So he's saying, he's showing me that, I don't know, Nancy, he's showing me there is a bird bath already there, but saying that he's sure that the other wildlife, especially the birds, appreciate that water, but it's not something that this particular bee is saying, well, we don't necessarily need that. Like we can kind of like land and maybe get a little something from a bird bath or something, but it's not our most ideal way of getting water. It's much easier to get these little droplets off the plants. Like that's what he's saying his preferred method is. He does like that you're providing some water for the wildlife though, Nancy. Okay, so we have another question here for you. Little bee, are you concerned about the pesticides that are harming the bees? Yes. Can you say more about that? So he's showing plants that have, it's not showing like specific chemicals, but it's showing like a certain level of chemicals. Like if there's a certain level of chemicals in plants, there's sort of this, what he's showing me, it's almost like this kind of whitish vibration that comes off those plants. And showing it as something that's becoming more, like the bees are becoming more aware of it, like that they look at those plants and they know that there have been pesticides on them. It's almost like like we're learning an evolution of some sort, like learning how to be more particular about what plants we are tapping into. You know, it seems to me like there are some areas where there's just nothing but treated plants. So how do, you know, the bees and the wasps that live in those areas, you know, how do they deal with that? So he's showing like when those chemicals touch the bee's energy, showing like a little foot coming into a white powder is what he's showing me. It's like we're becoming more aware of how it actually affects our system, and it's taking longer for us to evolve than maybe we had hoped. But there's this sense of like seeing the other bees and their colonies die, and they're becoming some kind of imprint or awareness in their blueprint energy that this is something to try to avoid. And he is showing like sometimes it is hard to avoid because there's such a prevalence of chemicals in the world. He says it's not just pesticides that are causing issues for the bees. Says he feels like the air pollution also causes some qualitative differences in the pollen. And he's like, we are really learning how to adapt and change. Um, there is concern, like there's this awareness, sort of like, oh, there's this organic movement, and then there's the more chemical movement. And he's showing this kind of interspersion of like, okay, here's an organic house, and here's one that uses chemicals, and how they kind of, the chemicals do have this crossover and affect things. And there is this concern in the bee community that even with, you know, the people who are farming and doing things without chemicals, that even though they're doing that, there can be bleed in. And so he says, there is a lot of concern in the bee community about the chemicals in farming. And he's seeing some change. He's saying even in the genetics or the epigenetics of the structure or the blueprint of the bee that is changing over time because of pesticides. Little bee, do you have any ideas about how we could raise awareness in humans about this? There has been a lot of awareness. It's saying, you know, especially in the last 10 years, even like the last 5 years have been a really big forward movement for, he says it's not just bees, it's all of us little flying insects that do pollinating. And he says, let's face it, some people are never going to care unless unless the whole human race is wiped out. There's a large segment of humans, this bee says, that just don't understand animals, don't appreciate them, don't have any concept of what these other animals or parts of the ecosystem are actually contributing to the human's world. And he's saying this is a constant kind of battle. He says there are things we're doing in the bee community, like I said, with this evolution kind of thing, that we are hoping will kind of allow us to adapt. But it is about just continuing to get awareness out there and speaking, reading environmental things. And so, you know, I know some of the other animals have said they don't feel like there's a whole lot of hope for humans and this stupid stuff we're doing to the earth. Do you feel like there is hope for the human race then, and the way we interact with animals here on Earth? Yes, I feel hopeful. He's showing himself buzzing, flying, buzzing around. And he says, you know, humans are really starting to pay a lot more attention to us and appreciating us. And he does feel like there is more awareness now than there has been in a very long time around bees and pollinators. So you feel like it is about those of us here, you know, just in day-to-day life, continuing to speak up or have our organic gardens or things like that? He's really encouraging us to be aware of any kind of chemicals that we're bringing into our biology or into our environment. Um, he doesn't feel like, you know, the government regulations of, you know, how many chemicals and how it affects people he feels like those limits are generally, chemicals overall are set too high. And this bee wants us to be aware of how these chemicals, to notice how they might be affecting our own energy. And as we as humans kind of become more sensitive to these chemicals, it can also raise awareness about it, how it's affecting other animals in the world. This bee is saying a lot of times humans have to feel the pain essentially in their own system before they really bring it to a larger focus. Like humans have to feel the pain themselves before they realize that, oh, other animals, other things in the world feel pain too. Says humans are kind of primitive that way. Okay, thank you for your opinion. So little bee, I'm gonna check our chat here one more time. We're kind of coming to the end of our time. I wonder if there are any last words of wisdom that you want to share with our viewers today? So it's good to find reasons to celebrate. Since our lives as bees kind of tend to be celebration every day because we're always around these beautiful flowers and these blossoms. It's like a wedding or a party every day when we're flying around. And there's this zoominess, this kind of zoom, zoom, zoom. You know how, like, especially these big bumblebees make that. He's showing me the sound they make. When you hear them doing the zoom, zoom, zoom around, like there's a lot of pleasure that comes from the buzzing and the moving around. It creates this really nice vibration in my energy that feels good. And yeah, just finding ways to celebrate every day, finding beauty in every day is how he encourages us to keep moving forward. Thank you so much, Bumblebee. All right, let's stop sharing here. All right, so thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm always fascinated to talk to these animals who are presenting themselves to me, and it brings me so much joy to relay their messages to you. So thanks again for joining me here today, and until next time, take care and be well.